Hello everybody, how's it going today? Glowplasma 231 here, back again today to talk about World Trigger, chapter number 236. And as you're probably expecting, I'm not going to say the away mission chat or the away mission test part, whatever, because chapter 236 is the first chapter in like 40 chapters that doesn't follow this, because this is chapter 236, Mirai Hatahara. Which is crazy. I mean, as a World Trigger fan, if you have not read this chapter, and if this is your first introduction to this chapter, you need to go read the chapter right now. Because this is, I was talking with a few people I know about World Trigger, and we all agreed that this is one of the best chapters of World Trigger in recent memory. I mean, literally. I mean, by recent memory, I probably mean by whenever Ninomiya got defeated by Osamu here 3 years ago, I think that was. I mean, it was a long time ago. And to finally get a chapter like this, which is just a perfect World Trigger chapter in my opinion, and we'll get into why as I go on and explain all the plot details and all that good stuff going on. This is just a really awesome chapter. So, of course, before we actually get into talking about the chapter itself, going through all, 34 pages this week, which is, like, crazy. Or no, not 34. It's, like, 31. 31. So, still a lot longer of a chapter than we have been getting recently. Granted, Ashihara did take a month off. So, I mean, that makes perfect sense to why we got this chapter like this, because Ashihara needs his time, and to cook such a good chapter like this, he has to put it on hold for a while. And while I'm here, we'll just go and talk about it. But it looks like a new chapter of World Trigger. The date hasn't been chosen yet, right? So while it could be that we're getting one here in October, we are probably not getting one because Ashihara's had some bad wrist issues and just all of that stuff recently, just bad health issues all around. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's at least November till we get our chapter, but that's just all speculation because here on the Shonen Jump app and the Viz app, it does not currently say, oh, hey, World Trigger chapter coming in yada yada days. So don't expect a World Trigger chapter again anytime soon, but as a World Trigger fan, we are all super used to this, right? So, to get back into it, chapter number 235 pretty much followed Ninomiya and E.M.M.I sort of having a talk with each other and learning a bunch of stuff about each other, and E.M.M.I's sort of immature ideals on what it means to be a good person, and Ninomiya sort of just breaking down E.M.M.I's walls until eventually the big end of the chapter was where E.M.M.I was pretty much yelling at Ninomiya, being like, hey man, you're the reason Hatahara disappeared and did all of this stuff, right? And Ninomiya comes back to the retort of, hey, E.M.M.I, Hatahara is in the neighborhood, right? And it's this big moment where we're like, oh crap. And of course chapter 236 here starts off in a flashback. I mean, we don't get any of what we saw last chapter until the very end of this one. It actually starts off in a flashback with just some narration going, shortly before Mirai Hatahara vanished without a trace. And we pretty much see Ninomiya standing in front of the boardroom. We see Commander Kido. We see, oh my, the one time I don't have my World Trigger reference page with me, I've got like the printout of volume, whatever it is. It's Director Shinohara, if I'm not mistaken. But I've got the volume 24 character screen. These are all of your characters. I've got that printed out somewhere, but of course right now is when I can't find it, and this is a big chapter, really focusing on a ton of names. So I'm going to try my best, but I am sorry if I mess up any of the names during this chapter, just to let you know now. And then we also have the third director there, which is not Director Kinuda, if I'm not mistaken, but they're all just sitting around there, and we see Ninomiya has walked in. He's like, hey, I refuse to accept this. He's like, by all means, my team should have passed your selection test, right? Tell me why my squad is not allowed on this current away mission, right? And we see Shinohara is like, hey, I expected you to already know why, Ninomiya. And he just continues to explain. He's like, as usual, Hatahara did not shoot anyone throughout the entire season. she has no business being part of the away mission test. And he just continues going, her apparent inability to shoot others will leave her unable to defend herself in the neighborhood. And it should be pretty clear to you how big of a risk that would be. And we sort of see Ninomiya just looking down and sort of just like, I mean, that makes sense. As Director Kinoda speaks up, just like, so you're that eager to come, why not apply for the mission by yourself as an individual? I'm sure nobody would object to your presence in there, right? But Ninomiya is just like, hey, that would be utterly pointless. Her goal is to join the away mission, sort of bringing a massive dichotomy to Tamakoma 2, where, of course, we know that Yuma doesn't particularly... I mean, now the crew all wants to go on the away mission, but to begin with, before Replica got stolen by After Kotor, there was no need for Yuma and Osamu to really go on the away mission test. It was they were going to go because Chico wanted to go to get her friend and, of course, everybody else she's known that got abducted due to her massive levels of Tryon. That was the entire reason that that team wanted to go, not because they individually had a goal here, right? So this is very interesting how close it is to Ninomiya squad there, right? But Kinoda explains just going, yes, we're aware of Hadahara's brother, who of course was stolen into the neighborhood. That's why Hadahara wants to go, right? And Ninomiya just like overtalks him, like, hey, my squad is more capable of making up for Hadahara's reluctance to shoot others. After all, there will be operators, engineers, and other non-combatants on the mission as well. Hence my question, why is it Hadahara in particular? Why is she such a problem in your eyes, right? As Kido finally speaks up, just going like, hey, there are limited personnel slots for this mission. Including squads with 2 non-combatants will create an even larger burden for the rest of the crew. Pretty much saying that Ninomiya squad as it is it's a 5-person squad. It's not a 4-person squad, it's a 5-person squad. With, of course, Ninomiya, Tsuji, Inukai, Hadahara, and then their operator, who is a name that I'm not gonna remember, because if only I had that reference sheet with me. Oh no! But we pretty much see the whole point here of, 3 out of 5 people being combatants instead of 4 out of 5. That is a pretty big disparity there. And on the away mission test where seats are limited, that's a really big deal. But as it continues, pretty much he's like, hey, is that not enough of a reason to satisfy you? His enemy is just like, it's very stoic and sound. He's just like, very well. And he just stands up and is like, in that case, I will prove to all of you that even with 2 non-combatants, and even with Hadahara refusing to shoot anyone, my squad will not prove a hindrance to others. And once we claim the top spot in A rank, I ask you that you permit us to join the away mission test, right? As Kido is sort of just like, we see that Kinoda and Shinoda are just like, oh my gosh, this kid, right? As Kido's like, hey, we can't make that sort of promise, not at the moment. However, once you achieve what you set out to, we will at least consider allowing Ninomiya squad participation. The conversation is over and you can see yourself out, right? And we sort of see that, he does. And it looks like Ninomiya has now left the room and is like sitting in front of like an elevator into border base, like to go down a level or something like that or go up. As he's standing there, we see that Azumi walks up on him. Of course, this is the highest ranked shooter in border. And he walks up and he's like, oh, hey Ninomiya, you're really looking down, man. What's going up? As Ninomiya's like, oh, hey Azumi. And he's like, hey, you've got perfect timing. As he walks over to Azumi and sort of stands above and he just looks down. He's like, hey, teach me how to shoot like you. And Azumi's like, whoa, where's this coming from, man? And Ninomiya's like, hey, I'm asking you to teach me everything you know about marksmanship, right? And Azumi's like, hey, you made that very clear, my dude, but we're rivals at the moment. Yeah, besides, you're already higher ranked than me as a shooter. And he's just like, hey, how about we polish each other's skills and see who's stronger in the rank wars? He's just like, hey, see ya, man. As Azumi just starts to walk away, like facing back, like walking the other way. He's like, man, it was a mistake talking to Ninomiya here. Like, what am I doing here, right? As he sort of see that Ninomiya now bows down and he says, Azumi. And he's like, I'm begging you. You can tell that I mean it. As Azumi's just like looks around and he looks at Ninomiya and we don't really get his reaction. as we sort of just see that this is the big moment we learned about so long ago, where, yeah, this is when because we learned in the past that Ninomiya asked Izumi to train him to become a high-ranked fighter, right? And this is the point where we actually learned that, which is crazy to me, because as a World Trigger fan, I honestly never thought we were going to see that. I honestly thought that was just something that's going to happen. But we just see so many things during this flashback. It's just awesome, right? But continue on, we eventually see that all of the Ninomiya squad is in the Ninomiya squad room. And Ninomiya's like, hey, all of which to say is that we will not be joining the away mission test this season, as we see all of the members in front of him. We see Hadahara, she's like, oh man, geez, I'm really sorry. I know it's all my fault, right? Inukai's is like, hey, there's no need to apologize. It was your goal to go on that mission, Hadahara. And we see the operator, she's like, yeah! Which, no, I don't remember her name. We also see Tsuji here, she's like, hey, do you think they'll actually consider us if we come first in A rank? And the operator's like, hey, I wonder all they said is they'd consider. I mean, that's not much of a promise, right? But Ninomiya's is like, hey, nevertheless, by taking the top spot, we'll at least be able to quell the notion that other squads would be burdened by our presence, because we would literally be the top of border. He's like, that very idea we would hinder squad to make them weaker is completely baseless. We can claim the top spot, and I will take our case to leadership once more, and we will get on the away mission, right? But this time, Hadahara speaks up, right? And she's like, hey, but what if the answer is still no? I mean, what if we don't get on the away mission? And we pretty much see she continues like, will everything we've all been doing be done for nothing? All of the blood, sweat, and tears we poured into the selection test? And Inukai's like, hey, listen, we're always shooting for the top spot in A rank. In that sense, we're just going to go at it like we always do. He's like, hey, don't dwell on anything or let it get you down, okay? As we see Tsuji also speaks up, like, hey, do exactly what he said, right? I do sort of like seeing this side of Tsuji that isn't always, like, girl shy. Because, I mean, that's Tsuji's main character trait in World Triggers, that, oh no, I'm not comfortable around girls, right? But seeing, like, him being able to calmly talk to Hadahara and the operator, which I don't remember her name, is really interesting and something I do like seeing for Tsuji's character, right? But Ninomiya speaks up once again, just being like, hey, it may take longer than expected, but mark my words, the leadership will acknowledge us as a candidate for the away mission material. It's like a weird way to put it. Leadership will acknowledge us as away mission material. Like you're people, man. Like, you're not just like items being shipped off. I mean, you are literal people who are going to risk your life in an alien nation to go fight. I mean, it's like, okay. But he pretty much just continues like, hey, that mission is meant for all 5 of us. He's like, do you hear me, Hadahara? Which is going to be really interesting, because whenever it comes to the future of World Trigger, if we ever do get to the away mission test, is the entirety of Ninomiya squad going to go? Because, of course, we know that Ninomiya is going. Ninomiya is not going. And I can see both Inukai and Tsuji going along with the operator, but it's like, will they though? Because with Hadahara gone, have the other two sort of maybe moved on from this grand idea? I don't think they probably have, but I also could see at the exact same time where both of them aren't going to be going, so who really knows, right? But after Ninomiya is like, hey, you hear me, Hadahara? The mission's meant for all 5 of us. She's like, yeah, I understand. As we cut to later, as we cut over to the Kagiura squad room, as we see that E.M.M.I is sitting on the couch and he's on the phone. He's like, hey, wait, what? You guys didn't pass the selection test? And he's like, I thought it would be Ninomiya squad turn this time around for sure. As we see that he's on the phone with nobody else than Hadahara. Of course, Hadahara, who is pretty much his mentor. As we see, she's talking, is like, yeah, me too, but leadership gets, they call it a shot, so we didn't get to go this time. And Emma's like, hey, did they give you a reason? As she's just like, yeah, they did. And she's like, they don't think I'm cut out for it since I can't shoot others. I really should have known. But Emma's like, hey, that doesn't make any sense. Toma gets a green light, but they said no to you, which I guess means at this time that Toma wasn't as good of a ranked shooter, because of course we know that Toma is now the #1 ranked shooter, and I do not remember that if previously we learned that Hatahara was a higher ranked shooter than Toma. Definitely a reread of this series in the future for me, right? But pretty much Hatahara just responds like, haha, no, there's nothing wrong with Toma at all. She's like, but I just feel like I left. But she just continues going like, but I feel like Hatahara continues just going, but I feel like I let my squad mates down, especially since I was the only one who wanted this to start so badly. I mean, the rest of them all followed me. But it was like, hey, whatever, it's fine. Those E.M.M.I squad guys always seem so laid back anyway. She's like, hey, don't be mean to everybody. But Emma just says, hey, well, sooner or later, leadership's going to recognize your obvious talents, Hatahara, and maybe you'll even manage to overcome your own problems someday. And she's like, hey, that's really kind of you, Yuzuru, but I don't think that I really ever will. I feel like there's just something wrong with me. And she's just like, hey, I'm sorry. And she just hangs up on the phone. And we see the Emma, who is like, hey, what was all that about? Sort of pulls the phone down and is just like blank face, like, what was that? As then we get the narration halfway through a chapter. Shortly after that, Hatahara vanished. Showing that, yeah, that may have been the last conversation that Hatahara had somebody, was with Emma, with that feeling of there's just something wrong with me. And obviously Hatahara isn't in a good mind space. It almost sort of reminds me of, once again, Tamakoma 2, how Chika has been during the away mission test arc. I mean, it's very similar, and I sort of like that dichotomy that Ashihara is building between these squads. At this point, we cut over to the A-rank E.M.M.I squad A-rank room, where we pretty much see that the operator's like, hey, it's meeting time, right? And she's like, E.M.M.I is feeling the biggest weight of responsibility for this. I mean, he should, more than he really should feel, so we need to try to keep the mood relatively lighthearted during everything, okay? As both Sujin and Nakara like got it. As we now cut over to the actual meeting room, where Commander Kido is talking with E.M.M.I, just going like, alright, so the cover story is that Hatahara received a disciplinary discharge after a violation involving Borders classified secrets, or at least that is what everybody has been told. In accordance, E.M.M.I squad will be demoted to B rank during the next season, and you will not be able to rise back up. Any objections? And we see it, E.M.M.I is just like, no, that makes perfect sense. I'm sorry for everything I've caused, right? Sort of feeling the weight of her disappearance the most. And hey, this makes perfect sense. This is the reason why E.M.M.I has been B rank for so long. They were A rank. This is why they are B rank. This is awesome world building, boys. This is great. As it all continues, we pretty much see that like a notice gets passed around to everybody just saying that Agent Hatahara has committed a violation pertaining to Borders classified secrets, and has pretty much exactly what we just read. And again, as such, the E.M.M.I squad has been demoted to B rank and cannot advance back up to A rank during the next season. Pretty much what we just read, right? We pretty much see a bunch of murmur in the sniper training room, or we see like a joint sniper training is getting ready to go on. And a bunch of people are sort of like talking around. Pretty much we just see a bunch of these agents and like, man, classified secrets? I wonder what she did. I mean, well, if they spilled it out, it wouldn't be classified. Ha 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 ha. Well, we pretty much see in the background is Emma, who's just like, hey, Hatahara did that? No way she did. Hatahara isn't like that. As we cut back to the Kagiura squad room, as Emma's just sitting there on his phone, just like sitting there. And we see Kitazoe, we see the operator for the squad. I think it's like Yui Amase or something like that. I'm actually going to look this one up because I feel like I know the name. Amase World Trigger. Is this the right person? Oh my, I butchered that. I put World Tiger. Oh, gee, I sort of need to look at what I'm typing. Tigger. Trigger. What is it? No. Oh, Wikipedia, no. Alright, we're just gonna give up at this point. I think I want to say her name is Ayase, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But we pretty much see Kitazoe going like, dang, it's already been a week. I wonder what's up with Hatahara. And it's like, Kona and Kunichika haven't been able to reach her, and the operator's like, where the heck did she go to, right? And Kagura's like, hey, she was dying on the going away mission test, huh? Maybe flunking the selection test sent her into a spiral of despair. Maybe she unclassified some stuff, right? And Emma's like, no, she passed that test, but the leadership stood in her way. Damn it! If only I took time to hear her out, right? We see that Emma's getting really heated about this as everybody looks on, and we see Ayamase just going like, well, somehow or other, we've got to have a proper chat with Hadachi. She's like, hey, didn't her parents move to another prefecture? And Kizo's like, yeah, that sounds about right. But I also remember something about her being estranged from her folks, right? And we sort of see Amase is like, well, great, so our only option is to call her out ourselves. As Emma's like, call her out? Well, how do we do that? But she's like, duh, via TV. And she's like, Arashima Squad, oh my gosh, I'm butchering names. Arashiyama Squad sometimes makes appearances on the national networks. And Kagura's like, so what? And you're just going to ask Arashiyama Squad for a fucking favor? And she's like, no way, no point in that. She's like, it's gotta be Yuzuru who calls her out. If he'd call it to Hadahara, then she would definitely get in touch. Nobody's closer to her than him. So she looks down and she's like, hey, what do you say, Yuzuru? She's like, okay. As we now cut out that they're all in the hallway. Like, this is obviously like 2 seconds after they made the decision. Like, no thought on it whatsoever. And we see the 4 of them are all going up to meet with Netsuki, right? And Netsuki's just sitting here, is like, so you lot are saying you want to be a PR squad, right? Do I even have that right to promote you? As, Kizo's just like, yup, you do, man! As we see Ayase is like, hey, what would be wackier than put a bunch of squad of oddballs like us as a PR squad, right? As we pretty much see that Netsuki's like, well, I don't really know about this. As Kizo's like, hey, we'd be appealing to a whole different demographic than our Arashiyama squad. Isn't that right, Yuzuru? As we sort of see that he pats Yuzuru on the back and is like, hey, please let us do this. And a sort of interesting note I have to say here is that we see Kakizaki, I think. He's just like walking down the hall at the same time that all of this is going on with the discussion of Netsuki. He's just standing there, right? Sure. I don't know if Kakizaki like saw the reason why, or we'll get into that thought here in a second, right? But Netsuki's like, yes, I've heard from you, I'll consider it a matter, but you also need approval from the commander and the director, right? As Joe's like, yes, alright, we got a chance, guys, right? As we pretty much see as Netsuki's walking away, he does the stupidest thing he can and starts to think. As he's walking away, he's like, man, I do feel really bad for them, but the risks of such a venture far outweigh any merits. He's like, no matter, I'll simply tell them no after mulling over it, right? As we see that Kagiura knows this because of his side effect, right? His mind reading side effect, right? And he looks over and he's like, hey, yo, mister, right? And Netsuki's like, oh, yes, Kagiura? And Kagiura's like, hey, real nice guy, you know, giving them false hope while you stall. And Netsuki's like, hey, what are you talking about? I said I'd consider it, right? And Kagiura's like, hey, that pity of yours does indeed cut deep, doesn't it? You hear me? As he goes up and just punches Netsuki, gives him a straight old-fashioned just uppercut, just pow! As we pretty much see Netsuki's just like, what's going on here? And sort of like flies back. I mean, this is like the first action shot of WorldTri we've gotten so long with just Kagiura just going boom, a sweet uppercut. But it's an awesome moment. As we see if all of this is going on, we see where Kakizaki actually sort of comes in. The Netsuki's sort of just like flying up and over, and Zaki's like looking like, oh my gosh, like, Kagiura, what have you done? As Kid's always like, hey, yikes, is Mr. Netsuki like dead? And we see another notice on the board just like a few days later going, hey, in light of Agent Kagiura's assault on PR Director Netsuki, Kagiura Squad has been demoted to B rank and cannot advance back to A rank during the second season. Which is almost as funny as it could be, because this is the other reason why this squad is down so low. I mean, we knew that they were A ranks before, and this is why they're B ranks now. It's the same exact thing with E.M.M.I Squad. why both of them got demoted and why both of them are trying to get back up. Makes perfect sense. But we pretty much see Kida always like a few days later, it's like, man, we're lucky we only got demoted and nothing worse. And he's like, man, if Kakizaki hadn't been there and seriously kissed butt like he did, I bet Kage's career would be on the chopping block too. As we see Netsuki, who's standing here, and he's got like one of those neck casts like around his neck so he can't move it at all. And we see Azaki's just like, all right, hey Netsuki, you know they're doing it for a good reason, right? Don't kill Kageura, right? He's a good guy. Yeah, he's a good guy. Don't do anything rational, right? He's a good asset to Border as a whole, right? Pretty much like doing all of that butt kissing. That's why Kakizaki was there. And I don't know if we learned that during the Kakizaki Rancor match, because, like I said, it's been a while since I've read WorldTri, but I'm sure with Ashihara's world building, that's when we learned about Kageura getting demoted, so makes perfect sense, right? We all see Kitazo just like, oh man, we should also be grateful to Netsuki for not getting the police involved for everything, right? And Ayase is like, hey, you screwed up big time, Kage, and you know it, right? As he's sort of saying there like, hey, crap like that just pisses me off, I can't really help it, right? As Yasuo just goes over, just like puts her hand on Kageura's head and sort of like just starts to spin his hair in a way, just mess with him like, hey, no way, mister. You need to think hard about what you've done. You got it. I mean, imagine if we cared about the away mission. You have blown that for all of us too. And Kitazo's like, hey, I guess it's back to square one with the whole search for Hatahara then. And they're just like, yep, so what's her next move? And Emma's like, hey, guys, we should give up on that. I mean, she left without a word. She obviously doesn't want to see any of us, right? As Kage's like, hey, come on, Izuru, we're a team, we'll help you find her. But he's like, hey, I've already accepted it, and I'm sorry that all of you have to cuddle me like this. As we finally cut back to the actual away mission test here, as we see Emma, who's just sitting here, talking with Ninomiya, of course, in bunker number 8, just like, what, Hatahara is in the neighborhood? And Ninomiya's like, yes, there's a high chance that Hatahara walked off base with some triggers, teamed up with a non-border entity, and smuggled herself into the neighborhood. But it was like, hey, what, people outside of Border she smuggled herself in? Like, obviously not being able to process any of this. Ninomiya is like, hey, I understand on a logical level why she would do such a thing. From her point of view, she was stuck wondering if Border would ever let her go on the away mission. However, why would that fool vanish without a word to you or her squad mates, the people she cared most about? And why choose to ally herself with outsiders? As you were so eager to point out, perhaps it was my problematic approach, and maybe I did indeed drive Hatahara away. But that doesn't mean I'll take any of this lying down. I need her reasons directly. That is my goal in the upcoming mission. As we sort of see that, as Ninomiya is giving like, this is my goal, this is what I am planning to do. I may have driven her away, but I need to find out if I did or if I didn't, right? As he's sort of just saying all this, we get Yuzuru's just like looking at him like very shocked, like oh my gosh. As that is where we end the chapter on page 31. This, oh my, like this is such a good WorldTri chapter. I mean, we learn so much, and one of my favorite parts is that it really just focuses on the two squads and the main key players in this. It focuses on Ninomiya's squad, we're talking. We learn why Ninomiya went up to Azumi all that time ago to be like, hey, please train me. And we learn just like all of this just really awesome and really crazy stuff in WorldTri. We learn the stuff with Zaki. We see why, why Kageura and Ninomiya's squad got dropped down, right? And I'm looking at something, one of the Discord members posted in our Discord. Come join the Discord if you want to talk about some WorldTri, any of the series I cover on the channel, because after this WorldTri chapter, me and the guy on the server, we had a really awesome talk about everything WorldTri related, so that was really fun. But he brought up that in chapter 122, we saw like the flashback with Kitora, where Kitora was telling Osamu about the rank wars and how Ninomiya had like bowed his head and asked Izumi to train him. So this is finally like the payoff to that, and it's just so awesome. And I mean, one of the awesome parts was just Kageura getting so upset for Emma's sake. We really see Kageura fighting for his own squad, and like as much as I like to give Kaguya Squad shit just because they're Kaguya Squad, right? You have to love Kaguya Squad, and this is a time where you understand that. You see E.M.M.I, who is there just, like, very upset, and all of the squad mates rallying around and be like, hey, come on, man, we'll find Hatahara, we'll help you. Hell, we'll even try to be a PR squad for fuck's sake, right? We'll do it, and we'll make sure that we get Hatahara back. And it's just all these moments is building up to the end where E.M.M.I sort of gives his resolve in this to E.M.M.I. I mean, you gotta think, like, E.M.M.I's what, 15, 14 years old? And E.M.M.I is like, what, 19 to 20? And just them being able to have a conversation and E.M.M.I just going, hey, but I won't take all of that lying down. It's like such a line whenever you read it. It sends shivers down your spine. Like, I need to read her reasons directly. So, being that we've read this chapter, what do I expect for the next chapter? To be honest, I have no fucking clue. I could very much see that we maybe have a little bit more exposition here with E.M.M.I. Like, maybe E.M.M.I coming out with the resolve to say, hey, I'll join you to figure out Hatahara's reasons. And the two of them sort of outlining themselves for, we will both be going on the away mission test for this reason of we want to find what happened to Hatahara, right? And I can very much see that happening. And besides for that, I think that after this sort of really awesome sort of break and everything, we'll probably be getting back into the away mission test. I think it's what'll be chapter 32, maybe, but we'll probably be getting that. And then as far as I'm sort of concerned, really soon, by the end, or by the beginning of next year, we should be nearing the end of the actual away mission test arc here, because this is really the end of most of the things. I mean, battle sims are practically done, so we're really all just getting ready for the sealed environment phase. So once that starts, that'll be like a bunch of more rank war stuff. But for the actual sealed in Cocoon test, this should be over pretty soon. And if I'm not mistaken, that'll be happening in like the next sort of probably 5-ish chapters. But again, this is WorldTri. I've got no fucking clue if anything's going to ever happen in this series. So, yeah, so thank you for watching this WorldTri chapter review. If you have anything you want to talk about, I really want to hear what you guys think about this chapter, because, like I said, I really enjoyed it, and a lot of people I know really enjoyed this chapter, but I want to hear what you guys think about it. If you guys really liked it or didn't like it, leave it down in the comments. I'll be very eager to see what you guys think about it. And if you did like the video, hope you won't mind comment, liking, and subscribing, doing all that good stuff. Subscriptions really help out channels, like the least you could do, and I think right now we're at 64 subscribers, and I'm trying to get to 70 before the year anniversary of me sort of going hard on this channel. So it's like 6 more subscribers here in like 2 months. So hopefully we can get there. But yeah, this was a really awesome WorldTri chapter. Thank you guys for watching. I do have other WorldTri chapters, WorldTri videos on the channel. So if you want to hear some of my other thoughts on WorldTri, you can go check out those. I guess we're like chapter 226 or something like that. It was like 228. It was the one with like a tutorial down in the dumps, I think. So if you want to go hear that, I've got those on the channel. And yeah, without further ado, again, awesome WorldTri chapter. And yeah, thanks for watching. This will be Glowplasma 231 out.